Alright, YouTube, Chick-fil-A. I've been prompted to make a video on the topic a few days belated because some of my subscribers wanted me to make a video on the subject, which originally I didn't find too interesting, but I'll make one anyway for their benefit. I've got a question for you. Why is it that the right-wing media, and indeed lots of conservatives, because I know Vermont's very liberal, but Rutland County, where I live, is the most conservative of the liberal counties in Vermont. Why is it that individuals on the right think that it's necessary for gays to remain closeted? They sort of give the attitude of, oh, I don't really hate gays, I just wish they wouldn't flaunt their gayness. They should just keep it to themselves, there wouldn't be a problem. They could go eat at this restaurant, nobody's going to look at them odd, they just have to not act gay in the restaurant. Why is it that that is the solution to the problem, rather than simply, why don't the homophobes shut up and keep it to themselves and respect people and pretend not to hate gay people? Why is the onus on the gay community to shut up and sit tight and relax and don't say anything gay, but the homophobes can come out on an interview, and he's a CEO of a substantial company. He comes out and he says, well, I think they're shaking their fist at God. He wasn't just saying, well, I support traditional marriage. That's a cop-out and bullshit too, and just a form of homophobia in itself, which is basically the same as saying, I think only white people should be able to marry white people, and it's the same thing that we had during the segregation era. But beyond that, he's not just saying, well, I support traditional marriage. He's saying the gay community is shaking its fist at God. They're, risking hellfire. That, well, we should ban gay marriage nationally and all these terrible things that the right wing somehow supports. Let me tell you something about the right wing. Let me tell you something about the conservatives in general. Now, generalizations don't usually stick. And there are many conservatives that are good people, especially the conservative libertarians. They usually don't give a shit about gay marriage one way or the other. I happen to be a libertarian myself. I'm not a liberal, believe it or not. I'm a libertarian. But let me tell you something about a lot of the conservatives that I've personally talked to. They don't support minorities in any way, shape, or form. They do believe that blacks are inferior. They do believe that Hispanics are inferior. They do believe that gays are inferior, that women should stay in the bedroom and the kitchen and cook and have sex, and that's basically all they're good for. I've spoken to these individuals literally tens of thousands of times, both in real life and online. One almost total unifying feature is that they'll focus on one or two minorities that they especially don't like, and they'll give sort of a half-baked explanation of why they don't support their lifestyle, and try to make themselves sound less racist and bigoted than they really are. But deep inside, they're Nazis, essentially. That's not even an exaggeration. Deep inside, they honestly believe that blacks and Hispanics and Asians and, gays and women, that all of these minority groups are inferior to the sort of white, straight, Anglo-Saxon male ideal. That's not a stretch of the imagination. Why do you think these politicians come on TV and they're like, oh, what Chick-fil-A did was great, let's organize, and then you have Huckabee and all these idiots organizing a special day. You're celebrating homophobia. What if the CEO of Chick-fil-A had come out and said, I think interracial marriage is wrong, and that black and white people who get together in marriage are shaking their fist at God, and that they're going to hell, and then gave a couple of obscure biblical passages for that? Do you think the conservative community would still deal with it? The Ku Klux Klan's conservative, they'd love it if he said that. You'd have 100,000 Klans people at Chick-fil-A eating there every day of the week. But even the mainstream conservatives, they won't own up to their own bigotry against black people because it's no longer culturally acceptable. There's no question that blacks have all of their rights. They can get married to a white person. They can vote. They can do anything they want to do. But when it comes to the gay community, they're still being stripped of some of their rights. There are plenty of states in the country where they can't get married. There are states they can't even get a civil union. They can't adopt in some states unless it's of a relative. They've got severely stunted rights in a lot of these states. And the only justification for it is, well, we support traditional marriage. Traditional marriage is a complete and utter lie. There's no such thing. You look at all the cultures throughout time and you see a million different versions of marriage. One man, many women. One woman, many men. Lots of men and women together. One dude wanking off to a goat. Married to some spiritual force. Arranged marriages, incestuous marriages. The Egyptians used to marry brother and sister in the royal and noble lineages. Lots of different marriages. Even within the United States. Let's take a look at what a marriage would have looked like back in the 1800s. It would have been white people only, or the black people can get married, but only to other blacks. The same goes for Asians and Hispanics. A white person could not marry any of these so-called other races. Wouldn't have happened. Would have been completely, they would have been dragged through the streets and burned on hot coals as witches or something. It was Christian. If a Christian had attempted to marry a Jew, or a Muslim, or an atheist, hell would have broken loose. Typically, the man was about 20 years older than the woman. Back then, a girl of 13 could marry a 30-year-old man. Is that the kind of traditional marriage that you want? That was an American tradition for a much longer time than what you define as marriage now is. Now it's at least both of the partners have to be at least 16 with consent, or 18. They can be any races they want. As long as they're not two men or two women, they can do whatever they want. And guess what? Bestiality is still legal in some states. It's legal here in Vermont, too. Should we all go out and, bang animals because it's part of our tradition? The fact is, these redneck racist bigots celebrate their own homophobia because it's the last issue that they're allowed to be bigoted on. They're no longer culturally allowed to be bigoted towards black people. Yes, there's plenty of bigotry launched towards the black community, but it's a lot less now. We don't have the Ku Klux Klan marching down, Pennsylvania Avenue like they did back in the 20s. It's falling out of favor with people. There's no question legally blacks have the same rights as whites. There's no segregation anymore. But we do segregate the gay community in spirit when we tell them they can't get married, they can't get a civil union, they can't adopt, they can't do any of these other things. Maybe it's just bullshit. We do the same thing to women on a lesser scale. We say, well, we're going to limit your right to abort if you get raped. Why is all of this bigotry, number one, necessary, and number two, so beloved by the right wing? They love bigotry. They love racism. They love sexism. And, they love discriminating against people based on their creed. It's just ridiculous because it's the one group they're allowed to attack anymore, and they can closet their own hatred and bigotry and say, well, I support traditional marriage, but I'm not going to shut up about how bad the gay community is. And then you had these black sort of evangelical right-wing types, the Senate and the House and stuff, right after the Chick-fil-A story broke. And Herman Cain, great example. He's black. He's arguing for traditional marriage. Mr. Cain, do you want the right to have sex with white women like you did when you were a businessman and apparently 3 or 4 different white people came out and said that you had, essentially groped them up and or banged them? You would have been hung by your neck back in the early 1900s even. You would have been hung. You would have been lynched by the Klan, or you would have been sentenced to death in some other fashion. That's traditional marriage, Mr. Cain. But you don't want to acknowledge that. You want to take the sort of nifty 50s definition of traditional marriage. That's okay, but the 1800s definition is too drastic. It's all a load of crap, and that's the final word on Chick-fil-A. and their idiot CEO, and I don't know whether it's true, but someone told me his PR manager died of a heart attack the next day. I have no clue whether that's a rumor or whether that's true or not, or whether it was meant to be taken figuratively, as in he was really stressed out. But let's just face it, any decent person who eats at a restaurant that's run by a complete homophobe, it's no different than going to the Ku Klux Klan restaurant. It really isn't. There's no difference between the two. The Ku Klux Klan supports a definition of marriage as between two people of the same race. Well, we don't hate black people, we just don't want whites marrying them and making mulatto children. It's no different. It's the same thing. Can you not see this? It's exactly the same. It's the same bigotry and it's the same excuse. It's stupid. And people are on, the right-wingers are on TV supporting this asshole and supporting his asshole organization. I've never eaten there, and I'm glad that I haven't. And I'm glad the colleges are kicking them out, and I'm glad the mayors of some of the blue cities are going to fight to keep or force out Chick-fil-A. I'm glad about that. I hope they lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Because guess what? All the money that they make, they say, oh, well, we donate to charity, and we do all these wonderful things. Do you donate to any gay charities? I'd love to see you do that. Or interracial marriage advocacy or something like that. Can you imagine the right winger doing that? It'd be so funny. It'd be hilarious. No, he's probably donating to all these religious charities that hand you a bowl of soup with one hand and then a Bible with the other and tell you to repent and then bash you on the head and you drop your damn soup. That's the way the right-wing evangelicals work, my friends. That's the way they work. Bible, soup, bam, bam. That's how they work. They say, oh, swallow the gospel. It's much better than the soup. And it'll fill you spiritually, not just physically. The dude's sitting there starving and moaning away. Oh, here's the Bible. You better read. Remember, man does not live by bread alone. He lives by the Holy Spirit. Anyway, I'm getting off topic a little bit. Basically, the CEO's a dick. There's no way to put it. He's a dick. And the gay community, I hope all the liberals in the gay community, because even though I'm not a liberal and I'm not gay, I support both of them on this issue especially. I hope they completely ostracize this business and make it as hard for them as they can do business in the United States. Just like they have with the Klan, but the right-wingers don't see the comparison, even though it's exact, and they say the same things about two different groups. It's just bullshit. So, hail